This is a Vibrant Minds presentation. Welcome to Sit at the Table, hosted by Abdul Boyens, Episode 5.
A seat at the table, conditioned to understand when survival becomes the way you love. Welcome back to A Seat at the Table. If you listen to our last conversation, friends, family, and boundaries, when love requires limits, then you know we talked about why boundaries are necessary even with the people we love the most. We talked about the fact that boundaries aren't walls. They are not punishment. They are not rejection. They're an act of self-love. But today, I want to ask a different question. If boundaries are healthy, why are they so hard to keep? I don't think the answer starts in our relationships. I think for many of us, it starts in our homes. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not every home. That's not every family. But for some of us, we've been conditioned to understand. We've been conditioned to give people one more chance. We've been conditioned to accept one more excuse. We've been conditioned to carry one more burden. We've been conditioned to ignore continuous disappointment. And we have been conditioned to understand everyone else's feelings while slowly disconnecting from our own. This is why, on this episode, I want to have a conversation about conditioning. Not to blame our parents, not to blame our families, not to stay stuck in the past, but because sometimes we can't heal what we don't understand. So pull up a chair. Let's talk. Conditioning doesn't happen overnight. It starts long before we enter any type of romantic relationship. It begins with our families, in the relationships we watched growing up. Maybe you heard things like, that's how they are. That's just how men are. That's just how women are. Nobody's perfect. Love means sacrifice. Relationships are hard. Now, none of those statements are completely wrong. Relationships do require sacrifice as well as work. And you know as well as I know, people aren't perfect and life gets messy. But when those ideas are repeated without balance, they become permission slips for unhealthy behavior. I'll repeat that. When those ideas are repeated without balance, they become permission slips for unhealthy behavior. Why? Because we stop evaluating what's healthy. When these things become our norms, and what seems normal isn't always healthy. We learn to normalize what we repeatedly experience. I want you to think about that for a minute. Because as children, we don't have many choices. We adapt. If criticism is normal, we believe criticism is a part of love. If inconsistency is normal, we expect inconsistency. If affection is followed by fear, we may grow up believing that's what relationships look like. Not because we wanted it, but because it was familiar. And familiarity can feel like safety, even when it's painful. Sometimes the relationships that feel the most comfortable aren't the most healthy. They're just recognizable. How we condition little boys and girls. Before children understand who they are, the world starts teaching them who they're supposed to be. Little boys and girls can be conditioned through what they hear, what they see, and what they're rewarded for, and even what they're punished for. A little boy may hear, boys don't cry, be tough, don't be scared, man up. You have to be a protector of everybody. And eventually, he may learn that vulnerability is a weakness. So when he becomes a man and something hurts, he doesn't say, I'm hurting. He says, I'm good. I'm all right. I got it. Not because he's good, because somewhere along the way, he was conditioned to believe that being honest about his emotions wasn't what men were supposed to do. And girls can experience conditioning too. A little girl may hear, be nice, don't be too loud, that's not ladylike. You have to take care of everybody and don't make people uncomfortable. Eventually, she may learn to make herself smaller so that other people can feel bigger. She may become that girl who says yes when she really wants to say no. She may apologize when she hasn't done anything wrong. She may put everybody else's needs before her own because she learned early on that being a good girl meant being accommodated. And here's where conditioning gets complicated. Sometimes the people conditioning us aren't trying to hurt us. They may actually believe they're preparing us for the world. Parents do it, teachers do it, friends do it, the culture does it, religion does it, and society does it. And sometimes the people that are conditioning us, they're passing down the same conditioning that was passed down to them. Think about that one. That's why healing isn't always about blaming somebody. It's about asking, who taught me this? When did I start believing this? Is this actually who I am or something that I learned I had to be? Because the child who was taught to suppress their emotions eventually becomes the adult who doesn't know how to communicate. The child who was taught to keep everybody happy can become the adult who doesn't know how to set boundaries. The child who was taught that mistakes mean failure can become the adult who is terrified to try. And that's the thing about conditioning. It doesn't always disappear when childhood ends. Sometimes we grow up physically while still living by the rules we learned when we were 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old. And healing can mean going back, not to live in the past, but understand where some of those rules came from. Because you can't change a pattern that you don't recognize. I'll repeat that. You cannot change a pattern that you don't recognize. And sometimes the question isn't what's wrong with me. The better question is what happened to me? And what did I learn from it? And once you understand that, you got a choice to keep carrying the conditioning, or you can decide that may have been what I was taught, but it doesn't have to be who I am today. Survival has a way of conditioning you. If you grew up in a home filled with yelling, you may have learned that silence kept you safe. If you grew up around emotional abuse, you may have learned that your feelings didn't matter. If you grew up watching someone manipulate, intimidate, or control people they claim to love, you may have started believing that love and fear belong together. If you grew up walking on eggshells, reading people's moods before they walked into a room, trying to predict whether today was going to be peaceful or painful, that wasn't just childhood, that was survival. And survival teaches lessons as well. Some of those lessons help us make it through difficult seasons. But some of those same lessons quietly follow us into adulthood. When survival becomes your relationship blueprint. Here's what many people never realize. The coping skills that protected you as a child may begin to hurt you as an adult. You become hyper aware of everybody's emotions. You notice every shift in someone's voice, every facial expression, every change in energy. You learn how to calm other people before they explode. You become an expert at keeping the peace. People call you mature, strong, easygoing, understanding. But underneath it all that, you may simply be trying to avoid conflict because conflict once felt dangerous. That's not weakness. That's what your nervous system learned to do to protect you. The weight of always understanding. This is where conditioning shows up. Someone hurts you. Instead of saying, that was not okay, you immediately ask, what are you going through? What's the matter? When someone dismisses your feelings, you quiet yourself because you don't want what? Conflict. Someone continues to hurt you. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. Eventually, understanding becomes automatic and normal. Not because you're weak, because you spent years believing that other people's emotions and feelings came first, before yours, consciously and unconsciously. Here's the truth. Understanding someone doesn't mean disappearing for them. You can understand why somebody becomes who they are and still recognize that their healing belongs to them and you're not there for them to project on you when things get triggering for them. You can have compassion for someone's pain without allowing their pain to become your prison. There are some hard lessons to learn. Healing teaches that we deserve safety too. Healing means learning something new. Healing isn't pretending the past did not happen. Healing is recognizing when the past is affecting the present. It's asking yourself, am I responding to this person? Or am I responding to my unresolved trauma? That's a hard question, but it's an honest one. Because not everyone who raises their voice is not trying to punish you or belittle you. Not everyone who disagrees with you is trying to control you. And not everyone who loves you is trying to hurt you. Healing teaches that unresolved trauma will follow us a lifetime. So, before we leave the table, I just want to let you know, if you grew up in a home where love was mixed with fear, where peace depends on someone's mood, where survival meant something quiet, I want you to hear this. What you learned may have helped you survive, but you don't have to live there forever. You are allowed to learn a different way to love. A love that doesn't require fear. A love that doesn't require walking on eggshells. A love where respect isn't earned by silence. A love where your voice matters. Thank you for joining me again at A Seat at the Table. From a youth to becoming an adult, trauma shows up. If something might show up different, but it's the same trauma. Here's something I heard working in the field. So many people have been affected by trauma as a child. They have grown older, but they're still that hurt child trying to fix themselves. So, please remember, everyone has a story. Everyone has a seat at the table. The table is set. All that's missing is your story.